We begin with news in from the United States. President Donald Trump says he's raising a new tariff on imports from America's global trading partners from 10 to 15%. Trump announced the new levy in response to a U.S. Supreme Court ruling striking down most of his previous trade tariffs. Justices ruled they were imposed illegally, but the president insists the new 15% tariff has been legally tested. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, welcomed the ruling by the U.S. justices.
It doesn't seem like such a bad thing to have Supreme Courts and therefore the rule of law. For those who think Supreme Courts are a problem in political life, well, here is a Supreme Court that saw the Constitution and said this is not in conformity with the Constitution. Everyone says that's wonderful. It's good to have power and counterweights to power in democracies. We should welcome it.
I'd like to welcome Carsten Brzeski. He's the chief economist at the bank ING Germany, and he joins us now from Frankfurt. Carsten, despite the Supreme Court ruling, Trump is increasing his global tariffs from 10 to 15%. What do you make of this?
Well, it's a typical Trump reaction. Never admit defeat, but go in counterattack. And that was to be expected because while the Supreme Court clearly ruled against a kind of tariffs, the one from Liberation Day, there are still other options for the administration to impose tariffs. And that is exactly what Donald Trump has now announced. There is a maximum of 15%. He goes for the 15%. And there is a maximum of 150 days. And that's also what he's going for.
We heard earlier from Emmanuel Macron. Is this another blow for European exporters?
I wouldn't go that far, in all honesty, because I think it's rather another signal that it's uncertainty. The Supreme Court ruled clearly against the Liberation Day tariffs. The Supreme Court also set limits to presidential powers. And now the question really is this deal between the European Union and the US that we had last summer, is it actually still valid? Will there be tariffs on top of it? Will Europe actually adhere to the commitments they made last summer? So I think, to me, this is a lot of uncertainty. I wouldn't go as far as saying that this is actually worse news for European exporters.
Okay. Again, the court struck down the previous tariffs. Does that mean that repayments are going to happen? And what, if anything, else might that trigger?
Yeah, indeed, that is what it's probably going to mean. The Supreme Court actually forwarded that to the lower courts. We talk about something like 150, 170 billion US dollars. But now it's up to the companies. It's not governments, but it's companies that actually had to pay these tariffs to ask for refunds. It's completely unclear whether they will succeed, whether everyone will ask for the refunds, and when these refunds would ever be paid out. If they were to pay it out, then there is a small hole in the US budget, obviously speaking. On the upside, on the bright side, it would mean that also the inflationary pressure that stem from these tariffs and that we saw in the US unfolding, that this will also fade away as there will be less tariffs clearly now from Liberation Day.
I'm curious about your take on this. What happens now to a planned trade agreement between the EU and the US?
That is, I think, the open question. Remember that after this week with the Greenland conflict, another flaring up of the tariff threat, the European Parliament actually put this deal, or the European commitments of this deal, on ice. It still has not been approved by European Parliament. And now the big question is, will European Parliament actually approve it? Because in this deal, we also have these 15% tariffs. I think that in the end, Europe will probably try to play hardball now, because that is what we also saw in the Greenland conflict week, that Europe is now trying to flex its muscles. It is also thinking, like many others, that the Trump administration has clearly been now damaged and weakened when it comes to trade policies. So I assume that the Europeans will want to go either for a renegotiation or will try to lower their commitments in the deal.
Carsten Brzeski, chief economist at ING Germany. Really appreciate your time.